America loves to tell itself that it's a land of opportunity, but the numbers, they tell a different story. If you're born poor in this country, there's a very good chance you'll stay poor, no matter how hard you work. In fact, studies show that over 40% of the people born in the bottom income bracket never move up. And if you're black or brown, the odds are even worse. Meanwhile, in places like Canada or Denmark, kids born into poverty have twice the chance of climbing into middle class. So that begs the question, what happened to the American dream? It became a distraction, a way to keep people working just hard enough to stay hopeful, but never powerful enough to change anything. So let's talk about how this game is really rigged. If you're born in the right zip code, with the right skin color, to the right family, the doors open. And if you're not, you're told to just work hard and you'll make it. But that's not how it works anymore. And maybe it never actually did. Because here's the truth. Upward mobility is no longer the rule in America, it's the exception. And those exceptions, the feel-good success stories, they're paraded around like it's proof that the system works. They say, look at her, she made it. Look at him, he made it. What they don't show are the millions of people who never make it despite working their ass off. Millions of people working 2 or 3 jobs, still struggling to afford rent, still drowning in debt, and they're told it's their fault they're not doing better. And here's something that most people don't know. If the federal minimum wage had kept up with the productivity, meaning that the value the workers create, it would not be $7.25 an hour. It would be over $22 an hour. So let that sink in. People are doing more, producing more, sacrificing more, and getting less in return. And yet they're told to be grateful. We're told to be grateful for our jobs that don't pay the bills. Or we're told to be grateful for healthcare that we cannot afford to use. We're told to be grateful for a dream that keeps moving further away. The system doesn't just fail the poor though, it feeds on them. It needs people to believe that poverty is a personal failure, not a structural one. It needs people to stay busy, to stay tired, to stay too ashamed to question why nothing ever changes. Because once you start asking the real questions, the system starts to crack. So a question that comes up often amongst my European friends is, if America is so rich, why are there so many people barely surviving? The answer is uncomfortable. It's because keeping people poor is profitable. And the illusion of the American dream, well, that's bait. You chase it your entire life, and even if you never reach it, the system still gets what it wants. Your labor, your time, your silence. Now, I'm not saying that success is impossible. Some people do make it, but we need to stop pretending that that is the proof that the system works. So I often think about this, that America has this new form of slavery. They don't need chains anymore. Today, they use debt. Student loans, medical bills, credit cards, rent to own, payday loans. And it's not just accidental, like this is all designed. Debt is a new way of keeping people in line, not just poor, but powerless. Let's start with student loans. In America today, we owe over 1.7 trillion in student debt. That's more than the GDP of the entire country of Australia. And it's more than all of the US credit card debt combined. We've convinced an entire generation that the only way to survive is to go into decades of debt before they even get their first job. And here's the kicker, you cannot escape this. You can't even file for bankruptcy. Student debt will follow you like a shadow, no matter how broke you are, no matter how much your life falls apart. I mean, what kind of country punishes people for trying to educate themselves? But student loans are just the beginning. Let's talk about medical debt. In the US, people don't just die from illness, they die from the cost of staying alive. Every year, over 500,000 families file for bankruptcies due to medical bills. That's more than 500,000 people every single year, losing everything just because they got sick. And many of them have insurance. So think about that. You pay into a system your entire life, then at the moment you need it the most, you're buried in paperwork and copays, surprise bills, denials. Your job is tied to your healthcare, and when you lose your job, you lose your coverage. You get sick, you might lose your job. That's not healthcare, that's extortion. And let's not forget about credit cards. They market them as freedom, buy now, pay later. But when your rent eats up half of your paycheck and your groceries cost more every week, you're not building credit, you're buying time. You swipe not because you're careless, but because you're out of options. And then the interest hits 18%, 25%. And if you're late, that penalty stacks like bricks on your chest. And debt isn't a side effect of the system. It is the system. You are more profitable to this economy in debt than you are out of it. They don't want you dead, but they don't want you free either. They want you stuck in a job you hate because it pays just enough to make minimum payments. Stuck in housing you cannot leave because the deposit on the next place is a lot higher. Stuck in a cycle where you're too tired to fight, too broke to leave, and too scared to stop playing the game. And the sad part is that we don't normalize this. We glorify it. Hustle culture, grind culture, sleep when you're dead, millionaire mindset. No one says, hey, maybe people shouldn't have to suffer to survive. But instead, we make suffering look like it's discipline, like as if you're morally superior for living paycheck to paycheck and never asking for help. We've taken debt slavery, put a bow on it, and called it the American way. And you know who wins? It's the banks, the loan servicers, private healthcare executives, landlords, credit card companies, university boards with millions of dollars in salary. And these are the people who never worry about money, the ones that make the most off of the people who worry about it every second of their lives. And here's a part that stings the most. Most Americans don't realize how bad it is because struggling is seen as normal. Struggling is seen as your fault, and that's the trap. Because once you believe your suffering is due to your own failure, you stop questioning the system that created suffering in the first place. But if you ask yourself this, if you were really free, would you have to go into debt just to survive? Would you need a loan just to see a doctor? Would you owe thousands just because you wanted education? Would you work 40, 50, 60 hours a week and still not have enough to live? So that's not freedom. That's captivity with a flag on it. They don't need chains anymore because debt works better. It's quiet, it's invisible, and it keeps you exactly where they want you to be. Afraid, obedient, and too tired to imagine something better. Here's the part that's most genius. They don't just trap you in poverty, they make you believe it's your fault. In America, being poor isn't just hard, it's shameful. You can't afford college? You should have worked harder in high school. You're drowning in debt? Maybe you should not have majored in art. Can't pay your rent this month? Maybe you shouldn't have bought that coffee. This country will nickel and dime people for basic survival and then mock them for not being financially literate enough to escape it. It's the ultimate gaslight. We built a system where the game is rigged, and then we teach people to blame themselves when they lose. We don't talk about systemic inequality. We talk about bad choices. We don't question why insulin costs $300 a vial. We question why someone with diabetes has a smartphone. It's always easier to point a finger at the poor than to question the system that created their poverty. And meanwhile, the rich get applauded, they exploit labor and avoid taxes, offshore profits, and we call them smart. We idolize billionaires like they're the saviors. We read their books, we quote their tweets, we follow their routines. We let the people who broke the economy become lifestyle coaches. That's pretty fucked up. But poverty isn't a character flaw. It's not a bad attitude. It's not poor planning. It's the result of policies, of systems, of decades of decisions made by people in power. This didn't just happen. It was designed. So anyone out there watching who can resonate with this, no, You're not a failure. You're not lazy. You're not the problem. The problem is a system that needs you to suffer quietly so someone else can profit loudly. Until we stop blaming the people at the bottom for the rules made by those at the top, nothing gets better. Because a country that shames people for being poor but never questions why so many people are poor in the first place is a country that's not broken. It's a country that's working exactly as it's intended. So let's talk about who benefits from keeping people poor, exhausted, and ashamed. Because the truth is, poverty is profitable. So think about this. If you're living from paycheck to paycheck, barely keeping your head above the water, you're not going to quit that job. You're not going to fight your landlord. You're not going to unionize, organize, or resist. You're going to show up, you're going to shut up because you need to survive. That's what the system wants. Low wages mean higher profits. No healthcare means more money for insurance companies. Debt means interest for the banks. Insecurity means cheap labor that doesn't talk back. And when you get tired, they say that it's your attitude. When you speak up, they say it's sour grapes. Because if you're poor in America, you're not just struggling, you're expected to be grateful. So who's at the top of the pyramid? Big banks who get bailed out when they crash the economy and then raise your interest rates when you miss a payment. Private healthcare CEOs making millions while people crowdfund cancer treatment. Landlords hiking rents up to 30% in a year because they can. Corporations using poverty wages while buying back billions in stock. And politicians on both sides who pretend to care but cash checks from the very industries profiting off of your struggles. But the most dangerous part is they've convinced the middle class, the people barely hanging on, to believe that the problem is food stamps, the problem is immigrants, the problem is people are too lazy to work, to pit poor people against each other while the top 1% walks away with everything. This is the oldest trick in the book. Divide, distract, dominate. And the result? We live in the richest country in the world where millions ration insulin, sleep in cars, or die in medical debt. Where teachers work 2 jobs, veterans live on the streets, and the kids go hungry in silence. And no, this isn't about bitterness. This is about clarity. When you see the same things happen over and over across cities, ethnicities, generations, that's not a coincidence. It's not a personal failure. It's a pattern, a system doing exactly what it was designed to do, what it was built to do. You think billionaires want a nation full of empowered, well-rested, well-paid people? Of course not. Because empowered people don't settle. They ask questions. They challenge power. They vote with their money. They unionize. They build movements. And every time it tricks one broke person into mocking another instead of asking why we're both broke to begin with. This is how power survives, by turning its victims into defenders. So I'm not mad at the person who posted this comment. He's just repeating what the system taught him. But I'm not here to teach people how to win at this rigged game. I'm here to share my voice and burn the rule book. Because the goal isn't to succeed within a broken system. The goal is to build something better. And it starts by asking the question that terrifies the people in power the most. What if poverty isn't your fault?